Our first Thursday show is loaded with content, including mixed reactions about AEW's Blood and Guts. WrestleMania Backlash is this Sunday, so we're going to cover all of that and everything in between with our very special guest. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Here we go. The bomb drops now. Hello and welcome to this very special Thursday edition, the new norm of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher, and I am not alone this week. Even though Jared had some family obligations and he got called into work at a weird hour, that's okay, because I've got our indie darling expert with us. The host of the Shandy Show is here. Mr. Andy York is joining us on this first Thursday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. What's up, man? How's it going?
Not much. It's good to be back. I've covered WrestleMania with you, and now I'm just kind of hitting all the high spots real quick. It seems like, so I'm enjoying it. I had since I'm the indie darling, I had to rep my AEW shirt. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about everything.
I like it, man. We have got a loaded show, but before we get there, we got to take care of some housekeeping. Make sure you follow the show at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can follow me at Chris Belcher 24. And once we get Andy back up there, I'll flash you up his social media so you can make sure to follow him as well. But make sure you subscribe to the show on all the platforms where are available. Where is that, you ask? Well, anywhere you download your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any of those places, make sure that you check us out. And if you're watching our smiling faces on YouTube, thank you for doing that as well. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button. That way that you get a notification every time that a new episode comes up and every time we go live. Hint, this Sunday is WrestleMania Backlash, and we will be doing our post-pay-per-view show this Sunday, so make sure that you mark your calendars. Make sure you tune in with us. We greatly appreciate that. Also, buy yourself a fancy Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast t-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com/PBW podcast. And Mr. Andy is one of our designers that helps us out with some of our shirts. We've got some new ones coming as well, so keep in mind that you want to check those out as well. Andy, since you've been on the podcast last, is a married man.
I am.
How is it going? Are we enjoying married life so far?
So far, about 11 days in, I think now. So I'm enjoying it now. Last week we were on our honeymoon, but I made sure to make time to watch a little bit of Raw, NXT, and Blood and Guts. So I watched it all while she fell asleep. So it worked out pretty well. We were in the mountains, so there was not really a whole lot to do. So I was able to catch it all, so it worked out pretty well.
Well, I mean, at least you got to do that on your honeymoon, I guess. That's pretty crazy. Anyway,
it's basically been like the only time I've been able to actually watch wrestling over the last month consistently. So it was a nice little refresher.
I like it. That's good. All right, man. Let's get to it. We debuted last week our first edition of Beyond the Federation, which is all of our news outside of the WWE, and there's a lot to get to with Beyond the Federation, but before I get there, I gotta give a shout out to the fans of Coastal Championship Wrestling. Those fans came out checking out our show the last 2 weeks, our interviews with Bo Tavian and with Nelly Acosta. Both of those interviews have become our 2 most played episodes on YouTube, and that is due to the fans of CCW. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. Make sure that you subscribe to our show because there will be more CCW content coming your way, especially this coming Saturday. Lucha Mania 2 live at Helios Granite in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to be there. Andy, you bought your tickets. You're going to be there.
I'm going to be there.
And because of these last 2 interviews, man, we have a converted CCW fan. I'm excited that you're going to come hang out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always looking for independent promotions to go watch and support, because sometimes those are like the most fun shows to go to.
Yep.
And so I think we went to one where Tommy Dreamer and I forget who was wrestling, but they wrestled right in front of us.
He was wrestling Bram.
Yeah. They
It was
wrestled right in front
commentary
of
for
us
him. Yeah.
and dropped him through a table. That was a lot of fun. We've been to some really good ones. We've also been to a couple of we had to make our own fun, but that's kind of how the thing goes. But it's always fun to go to those. So I'm looking forward to Saturday night.
It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Bram, known as Thomas Latimer in the NWA circle, he is going to be there this coming Saturday, and he will be challenging ECW legend Super Crazy in the main event. There's all kinds of great action. OVW Women's Champion is headed our way as well. Of course, the CCW Women's Champion. The tag titles are going to be on the line. All of these awesome matches this Saturday, May 15th. So if you're listening and you're in the Nashville area, make sure you check out, I think it's ccwrestlingfl.com, and get your tickets there. Make sure that you do that, or I'm sure you can buy them at the door. Make sure you come hang out with us 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Also, another thing to get to in Beyond the Federation, Jared and I mentioned last week the Brian Pillman Dark Side of the Ring episode. Andy, I know you haven't gotten a chance to watch that just yet. I've watched it. It's absolutely incredible. If you're on the fence about watching it, let me just tell you, it's sad, it's refreshing, it's awesome, it's eye-opening, it's everything you want as a wrestling fan. It's all wrapped into one in this 2-hour documentary. Dark Side of the Ring has knocked it out of the park once again. Make sure that you check it out. Andy, I know you're a little bit younger than myself. So your wrestling knowledge isn't expanded as far as mine. What is your knowledge as far as being a Brian Pillman fan before watching the Dark Side of the Ring?
Yeah, well, one thing for sure is I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, he is a Kentucky boy.
Northern Kentucky, yes, Cincinnati area. Yep.
So that's one of the first things that I learned about him, being a Kentucky boy myself. But I also remember the infamous did he actually shoot a man on live TV with Stone Cold Steve Austin, that I think brought a lot of backlash to WWE, because the sponsors and stuff weren't I think it was on USA at the time still too. Yep. They weren't told what was happening, so they weren't 1,000% sure what was going on as well. So I know a lot of stuff here and there. I know his son, Brian Pillman Jr., is still doing a lot of wrestling, and I think he's on AEW, if I remember correctly.
Yep, Varsity Blondes. Yep.
Yeah, and so I catch him from time to time, but I'm excited to watch the documentary. Every Dark Side of the Ring documentary I've watched has just been absolutely amazing, and so I'm looking forward to kind of knowing more about him and his story.
It's going to be awesome for sure. Jared and I are old school fans and are big fans of Brian Pillman. I really remember, and this is not just me shooting the breeze, I really do remember those stages in his career when he went from the long-haired Cincinnati Bengals tights to the Four Horsemen stuff, evolving into the loose cannon, pulling the gun on live TV. I was watching it live. I kid you not when it happened. It was crazy. And then ultimately him passing away way too soon. Yeah. The Dark Side of the Ring is an absolutely fantastic story. Jared and I will cover that in depth, in detail at some point down the road when we cover a lot more of those Dark Side of the Ring shows. Man, let's get to AEW. The big controversy over the week. Well, I wouldn't say controversy. I would just say it's been met with a lot of criticism, both positive and negative. Of course, I am talking about the Blood and Guts match. Now, let me preface this by saying there are some AEW fans out there who I talk to on a regular basis who might think that I'm a little too negative when it comes to AEW. I'm just being honest. Guys, send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24. This is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. This is my podcast. I'm going to tell.
Absolutely.
So, when I say this, though, let me say with 100% honesty, when I was watching this match, I was not looking for stuff to pick apart. I was watching the match as a legit wrestling fan. However, there are some things that just were glaring issues that I can't get past. One of the more positive things that I will say, though, is the crowd was super, super hot for this match. Yep. I mean, there was no doubt about it. They were singing Judas on the Jericho's entrance. It was great. And we figure out later on that all the matches that happened before Blood and Guts was taped a couple of weeks ago. So this is the first action the crowd is actually seeing. So, man, that makes a lot of sense as to why they were in such a frenzy to finally see wrestling.
Yeah, and I think Tony Khan even came out before the show even started, saying this is what we're doing. If you want a refund, you can go get a refund now. This is what we're going to do. And I think at the time watching it, I was like, this is weird. Why would you tape half of it for a non-live audience and then, then play it and then use their actual reaction? But I think it all paid off when we got to the Blood and Guts match, because they were so ready for some live action and everything. And so I think it definitely added to it. And during this whole last year and a half of not having a lot of fans anywhere, it's so nice just to hear an actual crowd reaction to big spots and big moments. And, they add, wrestling fans add make or break shows sometimes. And I think that kind of happened here for sure.
Yep, no doubt. Absolutely it did. And I think one of the things that they said, I don't remember who it was that said in an interview, it might have been Tony Khan in an interview the next day, said that logistically getting the cage together would have taken way too long. Well, here's my beef with that. I'm not picking it apart or anything. I'm legit just asking the question. When you look at the top of the cage, it has the cables where it's suspended from above.
Yeah.
So why could you not just lower the cage?
Yeah, I didn't look at all the way it worked together or whatever. And even if it would have taken a little while, you still could have done like some backstage interviews and
the promo,
some backstage segment. Like you could have done the Kenny Omega and Miro promo backstage, and I think it would have worked just fine. Which I have a whole another beef with the whole Kenny Omega promo, which we can cover at some point.
Go for it. No, go for it. Me too. Go ahead.
Because I think if I'm Impact Wrestling, I would be livid right now. And I saw Bully Ray actually tweet this out, and I fully agree. If I'm going to put my belt on you to get promotion when you're like in your company, I don't want just some other guy carrying it around for you. Like I get, like you have four belts, and you have I forget his name.
Michael Nakazawa.
Yeah, you have Nakazawa there to carry some of them. Like he could carry I think Kenny's like the AAA champion or whatever, and he could carry the TNA World Heavyweight Championship too. But like I would want Kenny to have the AEW World Heavyweight Championship on one side and the Impact Wrestling Championship on the other side. Yep. Just like if I'm AEW, if Kenny's on Impact TV, I want that AEW Championship. Like every time I see Kenny, I see the championship. So that was one of my big issues. I love the promo that Kenny cut, and I love the interaction between him and Orange Cassidy. But that was like one of my biggest pet peeves was, if I'm Impact, I would be very upset the fact that you didn't put my title right next to yours to kind of make it even more of a big deal that he is this massive multi-champion in multiple companies.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for improvement as far as the way that they're handling this, because wasn't it the fact that, if I remember right, the Wednesday before he faced Rich Swann for the Impact title, like they didn't even mention it on Dynamite or whatever. And so it just, there's definitely some room to grow as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But if we go back to the Blood and Guts match for a second, one of the things, the last positive thing that I'll say that stuck out to me is that Sammy Guevara looked like $1 million.
Yeah, he did
in this match. And I think it's a situation to where, I could be totally wrong here. Again, send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24. Right there it is below. I could be wrong about this, but it seems like when somebody enters the War Games-esque match, I'm not going to call this War Games, when they enter the match first, they always come out looking the best.
Yeah.
Because they got to get in there and they got to fight from behind more than anybody. And I think Sammy Guevara, along with some of the spots that he did in the match, obviously the coast to coast and the Spanish fly and all that stuff, I thought Sammy Guevara looked like $1 million after this match.
Yeah, he had one moment where he kind of lost his footing, I think, and it looked for a second like he got seriously hurt
Yeah,
at one point. And so I thought that was that kind of was a dodgy spot. But yeah, I fully agree. I think if this match did nothing else right, which I think I enjoyed it quite a bit.
sure.
But if this match did nothing else right, it got MJF over as a massive heel.
Yep.
But it also got Sammy Guevara over as like a really good wrestler and a really strong
Yep.
worker, which we already knew, but it just kind of elevated it even more. And this match is obviously going to draw a lot of comparisons to War Games because it's the same thing without being the same thing, but is the same thing.
Right.
And one of the things I really loved about this more than the NXT version is the fact that when guys got in the ring, there was like a sense of urgency about them where like it wasn't always pretty, but it was hard hitting. And I
Sure.
really, really enjoyed that they weren't just like going in there and hitting a few moves, but like I believe I always get them mixed up with their WWE names, but FTR because Dax was in first and then
Yes.
Cash came in.
Yes, that's correct.
And when Cash came in, he was like going all over the place, hitting big. Like I absolutely loved when they came in. There was such a big sense of urgency. When Jack Hager came in, like he was throwing dudes around. It made him look really strong. So I think this match really made everyone look strong in a lot of positive ways. And so I think to me it was the sense of urgency between everybody that really kind of made it so chaotic that it should be, like the way that it should be.
It looked like a war between two factions, which is what it was supposed to be. And I agree with you. All positives, everything was great until Jericho came in.
Yeah.
Now, when Jericho came in, I don't know what it was. I don't know if something was wrong, if something was mistimed, or what. But he stuck to Aubrey Edwards on the side of the ring like he just couldn't get away from her. Like he was literally facing the hard cam, just talking to her the whole time.
Yeah.
So the match stalled. So I don't know what happened, but it was really, really distracting. And production did not do him any favors because they kept on the hard cam. So you see all of this happening. And then when you go up to the top of the cage with Jericho and MJF, number one, MJF went to the top of the cage during a commercial break. That was dumb.
Yeah.
But because if you weren't watching the picture in picture, because I know a lot of people don't, I normally don't, you don't know. So you miss that stuff.
Yeah.
So you get those guys on the top of the cage, and then Jericho goes for his blade in his wrist tape, and the camera doesn't move.
Yeah.
Like you get him the whole time. That was one of my biggest pet peeves with this match. Now, probably my biggest is that once they got to the top of the cage, you saw nothing else but Jericho and MJF.
Yeah.
Drives me nuts, man.
Yeah. And I think, I think, and to their credit, not to their credit, but to their defense, because, just to play devil's advocate here, because I fully agree
wearing an AEW.
I am wearing. So. But I promise you, I'm not an AEW shrill. I am as hard on AEW as I am on WWE, and so anyways. But it would, especially the way the cage is built, it would be really hard to capture everything that's going on the top of the cage and everything that's going on in the ring at the same time. Absolutely. And so I think, but there was a lot of moments where there's like MJF and Jericho were just kind of laying there, where you could have shown something in the ring where, maybe FTR is hitting a big move, maybe Hager's hitting a big move, or Hager's been hitting a big move, or whatever's going on. And so I think that was definitely kind of took away from it. And I think everything was going fine until Jericho came in, and even some of the stuff that they were doing in the ring when Jericho was in the ring was fine. Like when they brought out the fork and just started stabbing dudes in the head with the fork, that was like, this match was brutal in every way. Guys were bleeding like crazy, because if you're going to have a blood and guts match, you better have you better have some blood in there. And I'm not always a huge fan of blood in wrestling. It adds to it a lot of the time. But like sometimes it can be overdone, and it's not fun to watch anymore. I think this one, it added to it a lot more than took away. But like when they got on top of the ring, when they got on top of the cage, I actually missed how they got on top, because it cut, it wasn't even picture in picture. It cut to like a full commercial. Yeah. And then when it came back, I was like, oh, MJF's on the ring, on top of the cage. I guess, that's fine, whatever. But then credit commentary kind of filled in the gaps a little bit about telling what happened, but I still would much rather. Sometimes it's be shown and not told, and I think that was kind of a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, AEW production really just makes my skin crawl. It really does.
Yeah.
And it's the thing. I'm a production guy. I'm a music business guy. I'm a sports casting guy. So like my eye immediately goes to that stuff, good or bad. It goes to it.
Right.
And it's one thing that I've been harping on AEW since the beginning. And my biggest beef with them is it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Like their production has gotten better from where it started, but they're still doing the same thing. Like you just said, Jericho and MJF were just laying there for a minute. There are 8 other guys going to war in the ring. Show it.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to hurt to cut to that camera. It's also not going to hurt to cut to a wide shot so we can see Jericho and MJF on top of the cage and what's going on in the ring. I mean, one wide, or the aerial shot that they went to at the end, cut to that. Just something else, man.
Yeah, I will give them their credit in one spot where after the match was over, they got a really great shot of MJF covered in blood on top of the cage with the blood and guts behind him.
Like the
post match production. They did pretty well, I think.
I agree.
But like one of my biggest pet peeves with this match, and one of my biggest pet peeves with WWE sometimes is like there were a few times where they did a lot of cuts in like 2 seconds, and take it like some of these matches need time to breathe, and like camera cuts take away from that. And so if you're cutting like really really quick, it's like I don't know if you've ever seen the Taken movies with Liam Neeson. But the third one, there's one scene where if you like watch it all the way through, they do 82 cuts in one scene to cover his old age of him trying to jump over a fence and run and things like that. And I get that, but there's like a point in time where like 50 cuts in, I'm starting to get a headache from watching all the different cuts going on. So that was another one of like the cuts were bugging me a little bit, but also they did get some good shots. They did get some good moments, from time to time. But I do agree the production overall has fallen off. And I used to defend them. I remember defending them on the podcast saying, well, they've just been at it for like 6 months, whatever. Well, they've been into it for 2 years now, almost. Actually, over 2 years. And so they should start, doing a little better. But at least they haven't done the SmackDown crane shot yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will say this, like WWE's camera cuts, yes, they drive me nuts as well.
Yeah.
There are a lot of times where they cut really fast. I'm like, guys, just
chill out.
Please chill.
Kevin Dunn had a little seizure backstage hitting the cut button apparently.
So you mentioned the money shot at the very end. Let's talk about how we got there. I thought the finish of the match was what it should have been. I thought it was fine. I thought it was predictable. I mean, Jared even predicted it on the podcast last week that's what was going to happen, and that's what happened. So it was fine, but the execution, the cardboard, the obvious, they just. I hate to say it.
You could tell it was a crash pad.
And I'm all for taking a safe bump. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is let's try to hide it a little bit better. This almost reminded me of Revolution at the end. And the reason that I say that is because AEW promises this big thing, and then at the very end, they can't deliver.
Yeah. I think it is not to the massive extent that Revolution was, because Revolution was a nightmare. Like the match
that wasn't what they designed.
Right, exactly.
It was faulty. So I totally get that.
Right. And it's kind of the same situation of like a really great match needs a really great ending for people to remember when they go home, and it kind of fell off a little bit. The crash pad didn't, like the safeness of the bump didn't bother me because
me either.
I don't want Chris Jericho to turn into Mick Foley. Like I want Chris Jericho to be able to walk around and be fine. So that part didn't bother me. I do agree they should have found a better way to hide it. Or to cover it, even in post-production or whatever. I think you could have been able to hide that a little bit better. But
they left the underside of the cardboard not painted.
Yeah.
If when you saw the aerial shot, you could
Yeah.
see where the dividers were. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, here's where he's going to land.
Yeah.
Like, just do a better job of hiding that, would
Yeah.
you?
I fully agree. Or like, I don't know, maybe because I don't think anybody should really take a crazy bump, but you
Sure.
could have had one of the younger guys take the bump. And I know you want Jericho off TV. You could have found another way to do it, or not off TV, but you wanted to get MJF with this really big heel moment against a legend like Jericho.
Yep.
I just think that you could have found a better way to hide everything or find a way around it a little better.
Yep.
But that being said, like the ending, to me, the ending was perfect.
It was what
it
needed to be.
Yeah.
It was what it needed to be.
It did its purpose of like getting MJF over as a massive heel, and like I would say MJF might be the biggest heel in professional wrestling right now.
I've said that for a long time, man. Especially when AEW first started, I'm like, this guy is the heel.
It was basically like MJF and Randy Orton for a while were like neck and neck, but now MJF has kind of taken that spot.
Right.
And so I think the execution could have been much better, but the outcome was what it should have been. And I'm fine to kind of look over the poor execution in some ways and realize that, okay, we still got the outcome that we needed to get. And so we can just kind of move forward with it.
Well, the outcome of that match leads to the match that was announced tonight on AEW Dynamite. We have the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle in a rematch at Double or Nothing, but this time, Stadium Stampede Part 2. I don't know how I feel about this.
Who was in the first one again? It was
the Elite versus the Inner Circle.
That's right. It wasn't like wasn't Hardy in it? Matt Hardy was in
it was the Elite
part of it
with Matt Hardy. Yeah. So you've got that coming up at Double or Nothing at the end of this month. And the stipulation is if the Inner Circle loses, they have to break up. So I find that very interesting. I think that will be a good way for them to go ahead and go their separate ways. Because Jake Hager needs to be a monster. Jericho needs to be able to go do his own thing and be off TV if he needs to and not have these guys depend on him. Sammy Guevara, we just mentioned, is prime for a good singles run. And then you've got Santana and Ortiz, who in my opinion, should have been tag team champions by now. Don't know what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
So I'm all for them breaking up. Also, Double or Nothing, it was announced tonight that Kenny Omega will defend the AEW Championship in a triple threat match against Orange Cassidy and Pac. What's your thoughts on that? I know I was kind of upset about the whole Pac and Orange Cassidy thing, thinking, okay, one loss shouldn't have killed Hangman that much. Where's the guy that beat Hangman? Why are we not even talking about Hangman? Do you think the triple threat is the answer, or would you have rather seen a singles match?
I think triple threat is fine, especially because we're kind of getting back into a live crowd audience style, and everybody loves Orange Cassidy, and we never really got the Pac versus Kenny Omega match that we wanted to kind of in the beginning, and so I think this triple threat, I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be a really, really good match and kind of showcase all three guys as some of the best wrestlers in the world today. And so I think it'll be fun. I think it's a lot of fun. If I remember correctly, this might be the first triple threat for the AEW World Championship. I think it is.
I believe you're correct.
And so I think that's always a big deal when you have like your first big moment like that. So I'm all for it.
Double or Nothing is supposed to have a full 100% capacity at Daly's Place. I think it's 5,500 is what they announced. So it definitely will be a good time for those in attendance. But for those who were in attendance at Daly's Place tonight at Dynamite, well, last night, if you're listening to this on the day that it drops, saw Miro defeat Darby Allin for the TNT Championship. A title switch that, in my opinion, is a long time coming. Darby's had the title. I'm not saying that he wore out his welcome or that he shouldn't be champion or anything, but this push of Miro should have happened as soon as he came in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think Miro Not to the same level, obviously, as he was in WWE. I think he's been misused for his first couple of months in AEW.
Sure.
But I think, I think they're going to put this title on him to see how things go. And I could very easily see him be the one to dethrone, probably Kenny Omega. Or, if you want to surprise everybody at Double or Nothing and put the strap on Orange Cassidy, and then you have Miro come in and be this big dominant heel that squashes Orange Cassidy to win the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. I think that would be really, really good way to go with him too. But I'm just happy that he's getting his day in the sun. I absolutely love him. I think he is crazy entertaining and is really I think he's one of those guys that really just gets the business and can get over any way that he can, or be a really strong baby face or heel and kind of take it either way. So I'm all for it, and I think it's going to be. I think this is just a small step to lead to something bigger in the future.
I agree. I mean, I think, I like you said, he's been horribly misused. I don't mind him coming in and trying to elevate Kip Sabian and best friends and that kind of stuff. I get that, but the guy needed to come in and be a monster and face main event guys, not mid level guys, because that's where he was in WWE. You want to establish him as a big star, you got to face the big guns. So that's where I'm at with Miro. But like you said, glad to see that he's going to get the spotlight in AEW, at least for a little bit.
Yep.
You are listening to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Belcher. Thank you so much for checking us out, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, watching us on YouTube, wherever you have found our podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. You can find us right here every Monday and every Thursday, catching you up on all things current wrestling, all things past wrestling. We do the old school, the new stuff, and everything in between. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening so that you make sure that you get our new episodes when they drop. I am joined by the host of the Shandy Show, Mr. Indy Darling himself. Andy York is with me. And as we wrap up this Beyond the Federation segment, this is sort of WWE related, but we still need to lump it into Beyond the Federation because Daniel Bryan is not with the Federation anymore, man. Daniel Bryan is a free agent. Last week when we recorded the show, there were rumors that his contract didn't expire until September. Now we've learned that that's different. Apparently he is a free agent now, but I don't really know what to believe, to be honest with you. I feel like he's really know what's going to happen. What's your take on this whole Daniel Bryan ordeal?
I don't really know. I think this is one of those times where it could be just him kind of working the crowd or working the fans of trying to, say, hey, I'm leaving, I'm going this other place, but he could show up at any point. But I also know that he wants to kind of make wrestling a back burner thing for him and kind of focus more on his family and other things. Yep. So I don't really know what to believe. I think this is one of those, if you remember 2 years ago, I think the whole Sasha Banks thing of is she leaving or is she staying? I think this is one of those of, there'll be a lot of crazy rumors, but until he shows up somewhere, I'm not really sure what to believe or what to think until that moment where he kind of announces it himself.
He's been very vocal about wanting to wrestle elsewhere and some guys that he wants to take on. But I'm like you, to me, until he shows up somewhere else, he's a WWE guy. I know he came from the Indies. I know he was, this big hot commodity on the Indies. But until, again, he shows up somewhere else, he's a WWE guy. His wife is a Hall of Famer. They love Daniel Bryan no matter how much they show it or don't show it on TV. So I really feel like they're going to do everything they can to keep him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those too where they may just be as long as you don't go to AEW, you could go wrestle a match in Ring of Honor. You could go over to Japan and wrestle a match in New Japan. You could, go to a certain place and wrestle somebody. But I don't think that they'll just fully let him go probably, because he's too valuable to your company, to your brand.
Speaking of WWE, before we get to the WrestleMania Backlash card and everything that was leading up to that, we have to talk about NXT. This is the reason that we moved our shows from Wednesdays to Thursdays so we can talk about NXT. And let me just tell you, this past Tuesday night's episode is, if there was ever a reason for us to move our show so we can talk about NXT, this past Tuesday was it, man. Top to bottom, this show was just insane.
Yeah.
You kicked the show off with Karrion Kross against who did he face? I've got it in my notes here. Hang on. Who was it? Austin Theory. There it is.
Yeah.
Austin Theory. Man, what a great match that was. Really was. MSK and Breezango in a fantastic match. You had the women's title match, Raquel Gonzalez and Mercedes Martinez. Bobby Fish returns. Kushida defeats Santos Escobar in a 2 out of 3 falls match. What a loaded show. Quickly, just give me some thoughts on a couple of those things that really jumped out to you.
Yeah, so I'm very happy that Bobby Fish is back. I think he and Kyle O'Reilly work really well together. I'm not fully sure that they're going to be a tag team.
It doesn't seem like they're going to be a tag team, and it drives me nuts. I feel like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I think they could do a thing where like they may put them together for like a week or two, and they may even challenge for the tag titles, and they lose, and Bobby Fish turns on Kyle. I could see that. I could see maybe, Roddy coming back and attacking both of them or one of them, or, maybe they still do some form of Undisputed Era without Kyle O'Reilly now. I don't really know what to expect, but I'm glad he's back because he is a fantastic wrestler. He's just always hurt, and I hate that for him. But he's really great. I absolutely love Karrion Kross. I think he is.
I never thought this guy would be a babyface, but daggum if they haven't turned him into a babyface.
And I've said this about a lot of guys in NXT, and then it's never come true yet. I'm going to say it again, though, until it happens. Karrion Kross is a guy that could be a big deal on the main roster if he's done right, if he's done properly. I think he could be a really big deal. I would love to see Karrion Kross versus The Fiend at some point. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch that. But yeah, I think those two things are great.
Let me pick your brain about another matchup that it seems like they're setting up. Karrion Kross against Johnny Gargano. I mean, it really seems like that they're kind of moving some pieces that they might have a match, even though they're both champions. Could be a one-off. I don't know. What do you think?
I think Santos Escobar is going to take the North American title from Johnny Gargano at some point.
Man.
And then I think you'll probably see, and it could be because maybe Karrion Kross distracts, maybe Scarlett distracts, whatever the case is. But I do think that they'll set up a Karrion Kross versus Johnny Gargano for the NXT title somewhere down the line. I think they're going to feed a lot of guys to Karrion Kross to make him feel like a massive deal so that when somebody comes in to beat him, it's a big deal. I think this could be the American NXT version of Walter. I think this could be a lot of fun to see them kind of put guys up against them and him knock them down. And then when somebody finally beats them, it's going to be a massive, massive deal.
So go ahead and fantasy book that. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but if you have to pick somebody to do that, who would that somebody be?
I'm trying to think of people that are on the roster now. And I don't know if it'll actually be somebody on the roster now. It may be somebody coming in from somewhere else, or somebody coming down. I could see not Pete Dunne, because Pete Dunne's kind of had his moment. Not Balor, because they've already had their thing. Maybe a Kushida, but I don't know if they could get him to that point. Maybe
that was who I thought of too, but
if they really ran with the Kyle O'Reilly story, maybe beat him down for a little while and put him in there. Maybe a returning Roderick Strong at some point. Maybe somebody like that, because you could, if you had Roddy come in and beat him, you could set up for maybe like WrestleMania weekend next year of having the Undisputed Era triple or Fatal 4-Way for the NXT Championship or something, because I'm sure that's going to happen at some point.
I would think so too.
But yeah, honestly, I can't think of anybody that's on the roster right now that could come in and do that.
We mentioned Kushida and Santos Escobar a minute ago. I'm really glad those guys got the main event treatment. I'm glad they went on last. I was afraid that Raquel Gonzalez and Mercedes Martinez would go on last. Really glad that those guys got the spotlight. I don't know why I'm a big Kushida mark, but I really
I love
am.
him.
And I cannot say enough good things about Santos Escobar.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fantastic match. Again, really glad those guys went on last. Let's run through the WrestleMania Backlash card, and we will hit some things from Raw and SmackDown along the way. We have the WWE Championship defended in a triple threat match. Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre will be challenging the almighty WWE Champion, Bobby Lashley. Now, I'm okay with them putting this in a triple threat match, but here's where I don't want to say I don't like it. I just find it interesting that we had Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley on Raw this past week. I know it was non-title, but they faced each other at WrestleMania. That was the big Raw match at WrestleMania. And I don't remember too many times on Monday Night Raw where Shawn Michaels faced Bret Hart, or where, The Rock faced Stone Cold, or even more recently when Brock Lesnar faced Roman Reigns. So, to me, I just find it unsettling to have a big time feud that was supposed to be a headline match at WrestleMania. Now we're going to have it on Raw. Instant gratification, ratings, I get all that. Am I just way off base here? What do you think?
No, I fully agree. I think because this is a thing that WWE does, like a booking thing that they do. When there's a triple threat, they always put a one-on-one match between each individual each person in the triple threat. So last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, it was Bobby Lashley versus Braun Strowman.
Right.
This week it was Lashley versus McIntyre. The week before, 3 weeks before that, I think it was Strowman and Strowman and McIntyre, wasn't it?
It was, yep.
So I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would. I kind of get why you do it, but again, you're kind of giving away your match before it even happens.
Yep.
And so I think there are other ways, and this is a great point. This is another point of if you didn't break up the Hurt Business, you could have Lashley and Strowman go up against Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin. You could have them go up against all those other people. And so I don't really get why they kind of booked it that way. And that's one of those matches that it's probably going to be okay. I don't think it's going to steal the show. And I don't really get the purpose of it. I think it honestly should have just been Lashley versus Strowman. And I think, you kind of let Drew go do his own thing for a little while and let him challenge a few months from now, but not right away. So I don't really get why we're going this way until it happens, and we'll see where it goes.
We have the triple threat match for the Raw Women's Championship as well. Rhea Ripley, Asuka, and Charlotte Flair. Do you think this logic applies to this match as well? Because the same thing has happened. We saw Charlotte and Asuka, and now we see Rhea and Asuka. Rhea and Asuka happened at WrestleMania too. Yeah. So the logic that I just kind of fumbled through, does that make sense here, or is it different because Rhea is still new?
Maybe a little bit, but it's one of those cases of I don't know why we're doing a triple threat here either.
Right.
Because Asuka and Rhea faced at WrestleMania.
And the night after.
And the night after. So why are we seeing that again? Yep. Why not say Rhea versus? I know Charlotte just came back, and you wanna get her in the picture, but why not save Rhea and Charlotte for SummerSlam or something different? Mm-hmm. So the fact that they're making this a triple threat is just, I think they're just trying to get as many people on this card as they can. Yeah. And I that's not always the best way to go. It's one of those of, I'd much rather have quality over quantity, and it seems like we're going over quantity right now instead of quality.
Well, I mean, on one hand, I feel like I'll push back a little bit because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 6 booked matches already are championship matches.
Right. Yeah.
Pay-per-view. So I'm totally in favor of that. I mean, as far as a standard of quality, I don't think you get much more quality than 5 championship matches on a show that's not one of the big four.
Right.
So I'm in favor of that, but I understand what you're saying as far as you're just trying to get a bunch of people on the show. Let's take a little sidebar in the women's division here real quick. We mentioned the Raw Women's Championship, SmackDown Women's Championship. SmackDown is Bianca Belair against Bayley, which I think the match will be fine. It'll be good. Maybe we'll see Sasha come back. I don't know. But my sidebar is, you're cramming all these women into the Raw match for one reason or another. And then you've got Alexa Bliss trolling the sidelines.
Yeah.
And regardless of how you feel about what they're doing with her storyline wise, she has basically been taken out of the women's division for the last year. And at one point in time, you can argue it if you want, she was at the top of the women's division.
Oh, absolutely.
And now she's not even wrestling. And I feel like that's really hurting the quality of the women's division.
Yeah, and because I know she has a history of head injuries,
concussions,
and neck issues, and so maybe she's not able to wrestle as much as she has been in the past. Which, if that's the case, then that's one thing.
Sure.
But I agree. I think she is one of the more prominent women in the division that's not a part of the 4 horsewomen, and I think that's a big deal, especially with this past year where Becky Lynch hasn't been on TV in a year, almost at a year. And so, I think having her, which I loved up until WrestleMania, I loved her and The Fiend together.
Sure.
And so I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that I'm disappointed in what they were doing with her. It's just now I don't really get where they're going with it.
Well, like I said, I don't necessarily get where they're going with her either right now. I think it's really weird with this doll, and we haven't seen the Fiend since WrestleMania, and I don't know when that's going to happen again, or whatever. So I'm an Alexa Bliss fan, but I'm kind of on the fence as to where they're going with the storyline. I don't get it. But having said that, though, she is a character both in the ring and out that the women's division is missing.
Yeah.
So I feel like that they're suffering for that. The other title match that we have not mentioned, of course, you've got the Dirty Dogs, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, defending the SmackDown Tag Team titles against Dominic and Rey Mysterio, which will be a solid match, and if given the opportunity, could be a show stealer if given the opportunity, because of the 4 guys that are in there. Roman Reigns defending his Universal Championship against Cesaro. Cesaro earned the match by beating Seth Rollins last week on SmackDown. So I'll be interested to see if this feud continues after the pay-per-view, if it's just going to be a one-off. I'm fine with Cesaro getting the spot. It's very unlikely he's actually going to win this match, but it's good to see him get the spotlight.
Yeah, I think we talked about this actually when we talked post WrestleMania. We talked a little bit about where they could go with Cesaro after WrestleMania, and I kind of hoped that they didn't put him I really hope that they didn't do Roman versus Cesaro right away, because they may hopefully they'd be able to build him up into something to defeat Roman at some point down the line. So that kind of makes me a little nervous about, maybe they're just going to give him this one-off and then he kind of falls back down to the mid-card and does nothing for a while. But I do think, I think this is going to be match of the night between these 2 guys. I think it's going to be absolutely stellar. But I do think that, this whole purpose may be to set up Seth versus Roman at SummerSlam in front of a live crowd, with maybe the roles reversed since the last time they faced, with Roman being the heel and Seth maybe being the face, or whatever the circumstances is. But I think after Friday night, I think it's kind of leaning towards giving Cesaro this one-off, but then putting Seth in that spot instead of Cesaro down the line.
I mean, I would like to see him lose this match and then go take the IC title from Apollo Crews.
Yeah,
that
I would love
be
that
really
too.
cool.
That would
have
be cool.
him give him a strong run with the Intercontinental title. That'd be really cool. One more thing that I definitely want to add from SmackDown this week, is I know we're running late on time here. Thanks for sticking with us, folks. We just want to make sure that we cover all the wrestling content we possibly can. One more thing from SmackDown that I want to add is Paul Heyman and the 10 bell salute. Oh my gosh, man. Roman Reigns was tried so hard not to lose it.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
I was hoping. God. I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter or not, but I was hoping that all three of them would start out doing to the Rikishi dance.
Yeah,
I would love it if the music would have dropped and all three of them started dancing. I love it. I absolutely love this version of Roman Reigns, and I love him and Paul Heyman being together, and it makes sense, and this is what Roman should have been from the beginning.
Right.
A complete and total killer that doesn't take any crap from anybody.
Yep.
Does what he wants, and he should have been the tweener he should have been a tweener where he was, that would have built up to him being a huge baby face. And I think they're on the road now. But this is the work Roman Reigns is doing now is the best work he has done so far in his career, and it's absolutely amazing.
He's going to be a huge baby face when they turn him. It's going to be insane.
Absolutely.
But here's what's going to happen is that people will look back on this and they'll say, well, WWE planned it this way the whole time. You shove him down our throats, then you give us what we want, and then you turn him, and then...
If that's the case, then they're geniuses.
Right?
They've been playing it right this whole time.
I'm just saying that there is that logic. That some people will say. So that really wraps everything up as far as WrestleMania Backlash. The only other match we didn't get to, Damian Priest and The Miz in a lumberjack match. I think that's definitely going to be very interesting. But as we close up shop and put a bow on this week's episode, shout out to Botavian. Look at that. We always have to hand out our high spots and turd sandwiches. Andy, I'm going to start with you on your turd sandwich, the worst thing across the board in wrestling this week.
Yes,
I can't put you on the spot. You're welcome.
Yeah, and I can't put Monday Night Raw as a whole on there.
No, you cannot, because I thought Raw was actually pretty good.
It was good. It was better than it's been.
It was better than normal. That's right.
I'm trying to think about what my turd sandwich would be. Probably this is the easy one, the softball one, but since you put me in the spot, I'm going to take it. The execution of the end of Blood and Guts, I think, would be mine. Sure. Even though the match itself was really good and I loved it, I think the execution was done really bad, and I think it could have. I think if it would have been better, I think the show would have been praised a lot more. Because as a whole, I love Blood and Guts. I think the whole show was done really well.
Yep.
Just the ending kind of took away from it, so I would say that.
The only thing they remember is the end.
The end. Yep.
And they jacked it up.
Yep.
My turd sandwich of the week is the return of Jinder Mahal.
Oh, don't hinder Jinder.
Oh, are you kidding me? Are you?
Oh man, listen. I think he got the bad end of the deal with his WWE run, and you know what? He's not the best, but he's fine. I think he's fun at times, and I loved his involvement in the House of Horrors match randomly. I loved that. I didn't love him as WWE champion, obviously, but I think he was just fine. And you know what? He is in great shape, and he has brought himself back from difficult times in his life. So
I gotta give him that, but I just can't stand him being on my TV.
Listen, if they give him a cool stable, I think it'll help a little.
Well, they gave him one, and they're going to give him the title again. You wait.
No,
you wait and see
if
Jinder Mahal doesn't win that daggum title, and then he faces Drew McIntyre in the main event, 3-man band, all this nonsense. You wait and see. It's going to freaking happen. I mean,
if it happens.
It's gonna happen.
If it happens, they have to bring back Heath Slater, and I hope Heath Slater gets the win. I love Heath Slater.
Give Heath Slater the championship. All right, man. On the other side of high spots and turd sandwiches is the high spots we got to hand out. The best thing that happened in the world of wrestling this week. Again, we apologize for some technical difficulties here. We are working through those, and we hear you. We're trying to wrap this thing up. All right. High spot. What was the best thing that happened this week?
the best thing that happened this week was I love the segment between Jimmy J and Roman backstage. I think that was
cool.
I love the fact that like, and I always get them confused. I love the fact that Jay Uso is like kind of not mind control, but like is aligned with Roman, and Jimmy's kind of like the I'm not going to be controlled by anybody. I'm going to do what I want to do type thing. And I think they're going to be like a full-fledged stable at some point, which I think is going to be fantastic. I think it would be great for them all to be together. But I love the fact that he's just kind of doing his own thing right now. And I think that's really cool.
I'm going to take the softball answer on this one, and I'm going to say my high spot of the week is everything NXT. This is 100% the reason we moved our show to Thursdays, and I could not have picked a better NXT. I'm serious, top to bottom. You will not be disappointed in those 2 hours. I'm just telling you. That show was just fantastic. Andy, tell us where we can find the Shandy Show and what you are up to now that you're officially a married man and back on the podcast train.
Yeah, we are starting up here very, very soon. Hopefully by the end of May, we will be able to get everything started and kicked off. But we cover all things Marvel, DC, Star Wars, movies, TV shows, wrestling, anything really we can cover, what we'll talk about and cover. But you can find us basically anywhere you find the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. You can find us there as well, except for Pro Wrestling Tees, because we don't have any merchandise with wrestling yet. But you can find us everywhere else other than that. But yeah, we are all things Marvel, DC, Star Wars. So if you're into that, come check us out, come talk with us, come hang out with us. We got a lot of fun stuff we're getting ready to start doing as soon as we start the show back up. So we're looking forward to it.
It's good stuff for sure. Speaking of that Pro Wrestling Tees store, make sure that link is right down below on our little fancy ticker, prowrestlingtees.com/PBW podcast. Buy yourself a fancy t-shirt designed by Mr. Andy York. Also, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, on Twitch, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you download our show. Make sure you subscribe. That way you get a notification every time we drop a new show, which is Mondays and Thursdays. Maybe some bonus content there in between. Who knows? Again, thank you to the Coastal Championship Wrestling fans for the continued success of the Botavian and Nelly Acosta interviews. We greatly appreciate it. Again, tune into our show. We're going to bring you more CCW content in the very, very near future. Again, Mondays and Thursdays is where you can find us. You can follow me at Chris Belcher 24. That's right there on the bottom. Again, the show is at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Andy, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I appreciate you covering all things AEW, NXT, and everything in between.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be here, and I love doing it. So I'm always happy to come on anytime.
I appreciate it. It's a blast. All right, for Mr. Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Thank you very much for checking out the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, and we will catch you guys down the road.